I'm Lorelei Tangi, University Librarian. I'm just going to say a few words, so continue to eat while I talk. I'm very honored to welcome you all to this exclusive lunch, book talk, and signing with our two authors, executive chef Helene An and Jacqueline An, who are right at this table here. The House of An has several restaurants, including the famous crustacean restaurants in San Francisco and Beverly Hills, and An Key, which is a restaurant in South Coast Plaza, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And I'll share more, yes, South Coast Plaza, thank you. And I'll share more about the House of An a little bit later. I just want to warn you that we will be taking a break when we set up for the speakers. That's a good time for a bio break. But before we take that break, not right now, I'd like to acknowledge Catherine An. Catherine An is the founder and managing partner of An Catering, which has received many accolades, including Caterer for the Stars in Hollywood. And so even though she's not here today, I would like you to join me in thanking her in absentia for this wonderful meal. Okay, now today's special event celebrates the 30th anniversary of the Southeast Asian Archive. And this one does have a slide right there. And as a memento, what the library has done is provided for you a commemorative spice tin full of Vietnamese cinnamon for you to take home and try out. It should be right there at your table. Now, the mission of the archive is to document and preserve the most important history, culture, and experiences of Southeast Asian Americans and their many contributions to society. And so I actually see this parallel between what the archive does and what the An family book does, in which they masterfully document their family story and their culture and share their recipes with all of you. We are honored to have many people in the audience who have been instrumental to the success of the archive. And so first and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the woman who was the librarian, the founding Southeast Asian Archive librarian, Anne Frank, who's right over at our table here. She had the vision and foresight to think of creating this archive. And then after Anne Frank retired, we had Christina Wu, who's our other Southeast Asian Archive librarian. Now, our current curator for our Southeast Asian Archive is Dr. Thuy Vo Dang, right over here. And she'll be interviewing Helene and Jacqueline later in the program. And last but not least is our head of special collections and archives, Audrey Eagle-Yoon, of which the archive is a part of, and she's right over there. Now, through the years, the archive has grown, and it's really flourished under their leadership. And in 2015, and I'm going to back up a slide here because I think that's where it actually was. In 2015, we opened the Orange County and Southeast Asian Archive Center, and this is called the OC&CIA Center for short. It's located across the Gateway Plaza, which you'll have a chance to visit a little later. This center, its strategic priority is to do public programs, oral history training, and building community archiving skills. Now, it's a really special place because what it does is allows us to bring together students, faculty, researchers, and the community to come together in conversation and collaboration. And our success is due to many collaborators and partners. And so I'm going to flip over to a few slides. Bear with me here. I'd like to acknowledge many of the people who are in the audience today, and these people range in groups from our ambassador group, our past advisory board, the School of Humanities Viet Stories, and the School of Humanities Asian American Studies. Please join me in thanking all of these people who are here. I'd also like to acknowledge some people in our audience who represent important community organizations, the Arts OC, the Vietnamese American Arts and Letters Association, VALA, and the Garden Grove Community Foundation. Thank you for being here. Now, investing in the Southeast Asian Archive ensures that our good work continues. And so we're going to try something new. The campus has just started a Text to Give feature. So to commemorate our 30th anniversary, we'd like to invite you to text this number to support the archive's initiatives. And if you have any questions, Wendy Morner, who's our Director of Development right here in pink here, is happy to help you. And at this point, what we're going to do is take about a 5-minute break. You can continue eating your dinner, your lunch rather, or take a break, and then we're going to have our speakers come up and get settled, and then we'll start the program. Okay? So thank you very much. While we're going on, I just want to say my thanks again to An Catering and An Key in South Coast Plaza for this amazing meal. Thank you. Now, before I introduce my speakers, someone asked during the break, what does the Southeast Asian Archive collect? And so I do want to just mention that we do collect papers, photographs, oral histories that tell the important story of the Southeast Asian American community, and we preserve them for future generations. And I want to give a call out to someone who just donated some papers to the archive. We're very honored that we have in our audience Tony Lam, the first Vietnamese-born person to be elected to a political office in the United States. So thank you, Tony. Okay, and now it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our special guests, the authors. And I should point out that there are many important and fun biographical facts in your program brochure, which some of you might have picked up when you first came in, and if not, you can pick them up later. In the brochure, you'll read about how Helene was inducted into the Smithsonian, and it was hailed as the mother of fusion cooking. And yes, and Jacqueline got her MBA at Wharton. But at this point, what I'd like to do is share a little bit about their family business, okay? The Ans are owners of the House of An, and their restaurant portfolio includes their original locations, Tong Lung in San Francisco, and Crustacean Restaurant in San Francisco. And in 1997, the House of An opened a Crustacean Restaurant in Beverly Hills, where executive chef Helene An creates her famous award-winning Euro-Vietnamese fusion cuisine. In 2007, An Catering was launched, and this really allowed fans to sample their cooking outside of their restaurants at events large and small. And in 2009, the House of An expanded yet again with other new concepts, and that includes An Key, a bistro experience at Bloomingdale's and South Coast Plaza. I think many of you have been there. And Teatro, which is a kind of kitchen market quick service restaurant concept in Santa Monica. So, to complement their award-winning restaurant empire, the cookbook On to Eat was published in 2016 to share their family story and Helene's previously secret recipes with all of you. All right. So now join me with Helene and Jacqueline and Dr. Thuy Vo Dang for the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? The mic is on. So I'm going to follow in Lorelai's footsteps and ask you to elaborate a little bit more, because I'm going to assume that many of us here have not read the book. Can you tell us a little bit about how you unexpectedly landed in this restaurant business?
Well, it started with my grandmother. She loved to travel and happened to have come to San Francisco in 1971, and at that time the war was happening.
1969.
Oh, she came in 1969, but opened the restaurant in 1971.
Yes.
But so she was in San Francisco, and at that time the war was happening, so it was very difficult to get a visa and to go back and forth. So she thought, you know what, I'm a great chef, I can cook, why not buy over this little Italian beach cafe? And that's how we actually got started in the restaurant business. It's really due to her, I would say, guts. I don't know how
This is just like an outfit.
Yeah.
So in way back in my country, I'm very lazy. I am youngest in the family. I don't have to do anything until really. So until I come here, and then I have to survive, and I have to join my mother-in-law, and then we start to do business.
It's just that for me was one of the most compelling pieces, you know, when you shared the personal stories along with all of the beautiful recipes. Why a cookbook finally, and now, and whose idea was it to create On to Eat?
Well, I guess a lot of, we've been in the business for over 40 years now, and a lot of people through that time have always asked, are you going to have a cookbook? And honestly, my mother, if anyone knows her, she's always busy running around in the kitchen, and she never has time to sit down. And it was really not until as you get older, you start appreciating all the little things that you learn from when you're little. And having my own children, I realized the importance of documenting, not only the recipes, but the amazing stories and legacy that my mother and grandmother had built for us. And I wanted to make sure that my kids, who won't necessarily have that chance to cook in the kitchen with my mother or their great grandmother, Diana, to be able to know them and to know our family history in Vietnam and the amazing how they built the restaurant. Really. With hardly anything, not knowing English, and to create the amazing business that they have now. And I want my kids to be able to have that. So that was kind of the driving force of why I said, okay, Mom, I'm gonna make you sit down for a little bit, and we're gonna document, our recipes and the stories. And my mom said, okay, if you're gonna write it, just don't bother me too much.
So I told her, I just give you a recipe. And then you have to try to read my recipe, and you don't have any question, and you don't understand. Then I answer you, because I'm too busy running the business. She
really is too busy.
I have to running the business, and I have to focus on my cooking on the restaurant.
Yeah. And so I actually want to call attention to the name of the cookbook, right? On to Eat. You selected this name very purposefully.
Yeah.
And so those of you who speak Vietnamese will already know this, but depending on the diacritics above the A, the meaning changes. And so aside from it being your family name, it also literally means to eat. So I think, that's one of my favorite things actually about the book, is that it really, right from the get-go, it brings together two of the most important things, in my opinion, right? Family and food. So
just like a fate.
Yeah. And so in the cookbook, you do a really great job of bringing together, giving us a sense of the balance between the balance of all of the ingredients, right, in order to bring out the best flavors of the food. But could you maybe tell us a little bit more about how you find balance in working together as a family, right? This is a family business, after all.
Well, I think how my mother is, there's 5 of us, if you don't know, so there's a lot of strong minds, a lot of strong female minds, and maybe some hormones thrown in there. But what she's done a really great job with doing is kind of allowing us to, go where we're strongest in. So, for myself, I went to business school, so kind of strategy of the business. I really enjoy cooking and writing. So this was kind of a little bit of my baby. Well, some of my other sisters are more artistic, and so allowing them to, to go in areas where they're strongest. And that's kind of how we're able to build a family business, is, building on our strengths.
Yes. So because I think in the restaurant, family restaurant business, always have a lot of headache, but I try to balance, because on my daughter, each one they have the strongest talent. So I just say, you feel whatever you can help, and just share with the family, and what area you can help, then focus on that. So I try to balance. So everybody can help me and working together.
Yes, and at the end of the day, my mother is the matriarch, so kind of her decision goes. So it actually helps having that balance of someone who, we look up to, that we can kind of exchange our ideas with.
And the main things, we always look at the goal, what we want to have to do for the goal for the family and for future. So this is the reason everybody has certain something different, but they have to sacrifice to think about the main goal for the family.
So I want to talk a little bit more about family. I know that you mentioned there are 5 daughters in the An family, the Ngũ Long Công Chúa, right? The 5 dragon princesses. And you've really built this empire around your collective strengths. But in terms of I actually want to draw it back to your earlier mention of Diana, your mother-in-law, who bought that deli originally, right?
Right.
So in the cookbook, you mentioned that she actually, was very atypical for a Vietnamese or perhaps Asian mother-in-law, in that she really encouraged you to be independent, right? She fostered that in you. And so now as a mother of 5 daughters yourself, how do you foster that independence?
I think I'm very fortunate that I married my husband, and in a family that my mother-in-law, she's very modern. She likes something more new and advantage. So she always encouraged me, you should go to school, even you get married. So she considered me not a daughter-in-law like the traditional way in Vietnam. She said, you should go to school, and I help you take care of the baby. So she encouraged me. Every day I go to school, she always bring me after the school, always give me something to eat to make sure that I have energy to study. So when I get my children, when they come here, so I'm very fortunate to get idea from my mother-in-law. So I think that I should help my daughter and direct them and guide them to be independent and encourage them to do whatever they like to do. Because I know the traditional way in Vietnam, we always have to listen to parents. The parents want to do something, we have to listen. We have to do their way. But sometimes it's good, but sometimes you cannot move on and you cannot become better. So I think my mother-in-law gave me the idea that you should give them some freedom and give them some, encourage them so they can get more education and they can improve themselves. This is the reason why I encourage on my daughter to be independent and go more in education.
And Jacqueline,
I was saying that my mother actually never encouraged us to go in the restaurant business. She always said, the restaurant business is so hard, please go out and do something else. And growing up, even when we didn't have much for the early years, it was very tough. My parents saved every single penny and never on themselves. And even to this day, anything that is expensive or name brand, they don't buy themselves. It's because we girls bought it for them as birthday presents or presents. And they save every dollar so that, we have tennis lessons, golf lessons, swim lessons, so I never felt without kung fu lessons. All of us girls, learn martial arts. But when I was 5 years old, my dad, so even though we're girls, that was something he encouraged, and so we learned martial arts. And I think I was also, my dad wanted me to, learn different languages. So anything that we showed interest in, my parents make sure that there was money for that. Yeah, so that was always something.
So I always teach them that I'm very poor, that I don't have money and a lot of money and gold for you, but everything I put in your education. So I want to encourage you, everybody in the house, on my daughter, you guys should try, if you guys has opportunity, I want them to expose to learn everything.
Yeah. So I actually want to jump back to something you mentioned earlier as the catalyst for you putting this book together, right? Was that the transfer of these stories and the recipes for the next generation?
Yeah.
You did a lot of research. Right? I could tell from reading the book that it wasn't just about asking mom a question and then writing it down, the answer, but it was digging deep and doing some research on your own family history. Can you talk about the process?
Yes. So one thing is, first of all, I was very fortunate. My family are big historians. So, that kind of growing up, every, dinner party, or there's always talk about history, Vietnam War. history prior to the war. My mother's brother was the ex-prime minister of education in Vietnam. So he was a great fountain of information in terms of helping me research and tell a lot of the history in the cookbook. So I was very fortunate to be able to, as I went through my research, to have a sounding board. And my mother's brother was definitely that sounding board.
Yeah, so my brother, he's very patriot also. So he loved to do research, everything in Vietnam. So now he has a lot, many books to analyze and to help the life of the Vietnamese people.
Yeah.
So he's, but unfortunately, that only himself cannot do everything. So he just tried to tell the whole family that whatever we can help, we should do it. So he tried now to get all the information. So every time we are at home, have a dinner together, I always tell on my daughter, and anytime I have opportunity to tell the story of the way back before and now and what happened right now. So what we have to do that we can do.
I just also want to, so it sounds like a very collaborative project, right? Though you have your names on the book. It sounds like many people worked on the project with you. And I want to point out, these beautiful photographs of the food, throughout the book, which a lot of press articles have called out as, amazing food photography. But what drew me actually were the old archival photographs and documents. Like you have the original Thanh Long.
Pictures from
who are the memory keepers in the family?
Well, so a lot of the pictures that went in my research and creating this book, my grandmother kept a lot of the old photographs, a lot of the rest. So Thanh Long, which we mentioned, that was our first restaurant, and it's still in the same location. So a lot of the artifacts was already at the restaurant, which was really great. My grandmother did a great job, keeping all that. And then I actually spent many months in San Francisco while I was writing this book, and speaking with my grandmother, going through the old photographs, and documenting it. So actually now I guess I'm the keeper because I have all the photos,
she's loved
all
Vietnam.
the stories.
She go back to Vietnam many times.
Yes.
And do research in Vietnam and talk to my sister.
Yeah.
They've seen her life. So she questioned and she get whatever they have it, she collect.
Yeah, so now I guess I'm the keeper. So a lot of it, I have it digitally, on my computer. And we're really fortunate that, a lot of these photos that you love is, I think, a little bit from my mother's sister, because they have some of it because they're still in Vietnam.
From my brother and from my sister.
And then my grandmother have a lot of the photos as well.
So you're the family archivist, historian.
Yes.
You must have a succession plan. Who's going to be next?
I only have 2 boys right now. So.
Well, I also want to switch gears a little bit and ask you about working on this book. What were some of the most challenging things for you?
So it was funny, I was actually just talking about it with someone, and it wasn't necessarily the history, the Vietnamese history, or even our family history. It was actually collecting the recipes. Because traditionally, and in many cultures, I think in Latin culture, other Asian cultures, cooking is not, there's never any recipes. It's done orally, as you cook, and that's how you learn. And so a lot of our recipes, and in the cookbook, there's actually a mix of recipes. There's our restaurant recipes, and I love putting those in because those we had written down, and it's been tested over and over again. So that was easy, no problem. But I wanted to incorporate the our everyday home dishes. That is part of our cooking, but it's not necessarily part of our restaurant, because this cookbook was, for me, like I said, I wanted it to be something that I could pass down through my generation, for my kids. And I wanted for our fans to have kind of a view and a taste in of kind of our style of cooking, and that incorporates more than just a restaurant. So we have a lot of home dishes and traditional dishes, the way that we cook at home, that's in the cookbook as well. And so those were a little bit of a challenge because we didn't have any of that written down. And in Vietnamese cooking, the style is very much my taste. So every time I ask my mother, why, because when you're writing a cookbook, you have to understand the whys for everything. So I think I was driving her crazy with, why did you do this? Why do you do that? It's just taste it. This is why. That was, yeah, but that was challenging, but it was actually an incredibly fun process because I thought I knew how to cook, but I learned so much more in, questioning every little step.
And master chef, even now, even master chef, when they create something, they on based on the taste. Then, so sometimes they do duplicate again, and then it's not the same thing. So now it's very good that every time you create something, you should write down, and then by portion, sometimes a little bit different from just say 1 teaspoon, a half teaspoon, or 1/4 teaspoon. It's completely different. So this is as a chef, I noticed that. So my daughter, she drives me crazy, but I'm too busy. She say, you told me like the salad today. I gave to everybody to try. It's in the book. Most of the time I serve at home because I think very light, and very light, easy to eat and healthy. So I just do it and I never taste. And then when she asked me, Mommy, why you want to do it? It tastes better than I do it. I just say, depend on your taste. So she said, write down for everything for me, Mommy. So I can write down in the book. So every time I create something, I have to make for her, and then I taste again and I tell her. So a lot of work to write down in the book.
But what I heard from that, and I think all of us hopefully can see the correlation, is so important to document everything.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, very important.
Yeah. I definitely wish I started this cookbook process much earlier on. Because it was such a wonderful experience, and now to have something, and
she become crazy too. She get mad. I myself always fighting. I say I'm too busy. I don't have time now.
Yeah, she was always too busy for my questions.
So when I work at the restaurant, she call me, Mommy, how much you put this? How much? I just taste it, and then you write down.
That actually really resonates with my own experience trying to get my mom's stories, and it had nothing to do with cooking, but I had to follow her around in the kitchen and ask her questions in between, whatever it was she was doing. So.
Yeah, it's very much that way.
So can you each share with the audience one of your personal favorite recipes and tell us why?
Yeah, well, people ask me that all the time, and that's probably one of the hardest questions because truly every single recipe that I put in there is a favorite for whether it's like if it's cold, then maybe I look to the porridge dish, or if I'm thinking of my sons, then I might look at the salmon dish or the zouk dish in the back. So it's really difficult. But I would say if you're new to Vietnamese cooking and you haven't really done Vietnamese cooking. The chicken beef, that's a very easy one to do. And you have most of the ingredients probably already in your kitchen. So that's a great dish to kind of start off with. Of course, almost everyone loves pho. So, and my mother, I really love her recipe. We have 3 recipes in there. One is the beef pho, the chicken pho, which is probably our go-to. And my mother makes that almost, I would say, 2-3 times a week for us for breakfast growing up. And even to this day, we come to her house and we eat chicken pho every single day for breakfast. So that's definitely, and it's really simple and healthy. And whenever you're sick, or even when you're not sick, we have that all the time. So that's a great dish. And if you want to kind of challenge yourself, or we also have the French onion pho, which we did at the Jane Spirit House. So this is a little twist on the traditional pho, taking a little bit French elements, onion soup, and then incorporating it into pho. So, but it's really hard to pinpoint, exactly one recipe. Oh, I do want to say, my children. So besides the zouk, which is shredded, kind of almost like a jerky-ish texture, they love that. So in our cookbook, we talk about how zouk gas, or shredded chicken. So that's in our cookbook. I love that. I always have that as a condiment, inside the fridge for days when I just don't have time to cook, and put it over rice, put a sunny side egg on it, put it on a nice baguette. There's just so many ways you can use that on porridge. So I think,
Especially and especially in the war, the people
in the war,
they always carry that in the pack. But in the pack, so then anytime they're hungry, at least they have something protein to eat. Because it's scary and it lasts very long time.
I recall eating a lot of that over sticky rice or something.
Yeah,
it is true.
Whenever we traveled, we always, my grandmother and mother always made
It's
that
healthy and very, you don't have to worry about cooking. So it takes too much work and
it keeps for such a long time.
I love that we're talking about food and I'm salivating even though I just ate food. How about you? Do you have a favorite recipe?
I have to say that whatever I like to eat, I put in the menu. So depend on every day. Maybe sometime in the season, sometimes cold or sometimes summer hot, and sometimes in the winter or autumn, depend on the season. Then I like. But everything in my menu, menu right now in my cookbook, whatever I like, I always. I have to say I like everything if I put in the cookbook. Yeah, but depend on the mood and on the day and the season. Yeah.
So last holiday, and it's actually in our cookbook as well. I know the holidays are approaching. I can't believe it's already October, but Thanksgiving. So we have an incredible turkey stuffed with sticky rice, and we've always done that. And so that's a great alternative, as we're thinking about, okay, what can we do differently for the holidays? So that's in our cookbook, and we do a great, what I call, in the cookbook, I call it the leftover turkey porridge. So I have that recipe as well. And so in the cookbook, we talk a lot about how we can, you can kind of make a dish, and then from that dish, make 3 or 4 different other types of dishes. So those are some of the themes in the cookbook as well. But that's like one of my favorite for the holidays. The beef stew is great. And it's so warm down here, so it's kind of funny. But I used to live in New York, so I used to make that dish all the time, the beef stew for my friends. And people know about pho, but they don't necessarily know about the Vietnamese beef stew with the star anise, and that's just really wonderful. Like putting it over rice or thick rice noodles. It just change up the dish, which is some of the different dishes in there.
One that I flagged for myself to try is the roast chicken with lemongrass.
Oh, yeah,
it's amazing.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah,
it's a family pleaser, right?
Yes, it's definitely a family pleaser. So that dish, in my family, we actually do a lot of roasting, and maybe that's a little bit due to the French influence, because roasting is not something that's traditionally done in Vietnamese households. Like you see a lot of grilled dishes and grilling and sauteing, but in our cooking and in our cookbook as well, there's a lot of roasting, and one of my favorite is the lemongrass roast chicken, and it's a little bit take of, in Vietnamese traditional cooking, there's gà tàu xả, which is stir-fry lemongrass chicken. And so we kind of took that idea, my grandmother and mother took that idea a long, long time ago, and did this as an amazing roast chicken dish. And it's so simple, yet so flavorful, and we have a big family, so it's such an easy way to cook. Roasting is such a great way to cook when you're about to throw a dinner party. So you can marinate it way in advance and then, put it in the oven, enjoy, hang out with your family, talk to your family. And then the smell, the aroma, helps get the appetite going. So there's a lot of roasting in our cookbook, which takes elements of our favorite Vietnamese dishes and kind of putting a little twist on it with, a little bit of French influence as well.
I use a lot of herb, squeeze herb, and marinate the chicken before I roast. Yeah. So we have used a different herb in here. Tia tô, king zơi. One of the two herb I use a lot. And the rau ram today I put in a salad. Rau ram is very helpful. I mean, it's very flavorful and very tasty. And I believe in Eastern medicine. They mention that if you eat too much chicken, you have tendency to have allergy. So I believe that the herb rau ram, it helps you, and then it helps you to avoid that, to stop it. allergies. So most in the chicken dish, I use a lot of raw ram, and
So
it's
lam is, and for those of you who aren't maybe not as familiar with Vietnamese herbs, is this one? I think we passed some of the herbs around.
Coriander? Is that
It's Vietnamese coriander.
They say Vietnamese coriander, but
It has a lot of it has like a peppery taste. It's very flavorful. It's supposed to be help with digestion. So it's often used also in raw food, right?
food,
So in bò tái chang, you find those herbs a lot.
so it helps. It helps
It's supposed to be antibacterial.
take away on the gamey flavor, give me this smell or the blood smell. So most of the Thai chang they use that and rau ram too. Yeah, to help you when you eat that you don't feel a lot of bloody in your mouth.
So I do want to preserve some time for our authors to sign their books before folks leave. So I'm going to wrap us up at this point, but I do want to say one more time how glad we are that you're here to share your journey and your recipes with us in this beautiful cookbook. I hope that you'll all purchase a cookbook and have the authors sign them. And I think they'll be doing that out in the lobby area. Once again, I want to thank Jacqueline and Helene An from the House of An for being here with UCI Libraries. Lorelei has
Thank you so much for having me. So we have an herb section which talks a little bit about some of the properties in the herbs that, and not only how it's wonderful tasting, but how it helps. So one of, let's see, the lemon balm or kinzoi. My mother usually, when we have a cold or a cough, she would actually make this into tea because it's supposed to, it's very helpful for that. So this is one of the herbs that we use a lot, not only for cooking, but just whenever we're sick.
Tieto on soup, we
Yeah.
make this rice soup and we put tieto inside. So
Yeah.
when we don't feel good,
So
we make the rice soup and we add tieto.
Thank you. And then turmeric isn't here, but we actually use a lot of turmeric in our cooking. It's, as you know now, everyone's finding out it has such great properties. But before, when I was younger, sometimes you have, acne and things like that. My mother would make it into a paste and put it all over our face and to help with the scarring. We're so fortunate in California that here there's so many Asian markets and a lot of them, and even the Western markets, they carry Whole Foods. Oftentimes, I live up in LA and they carry, not all the time, but they would carry a lot of the herbs. But when I used to live in New York, that was actually a challenge for me to find some of these herbs. And they're so easy to grow. So, you can buy the seeds online and, grow it right at your windowsill, and they grow really, really well. They're a type of mint for most part. Most of these herbs are in the mint family, so they grow just as easily. So you can do that. This tieto is also very similar to shiso. So some of you, if you're familiar with shiso, you can also use shiso. It doesn't taste quite the same, but the smell is actually in the same family. So I often, when I was in New York, there wasn't, I think there was one Vietnamese market, and it wasn't even truly a Vietnamese market, but there were lots of Japanese and Korean markets, and they always had shiso leaf. And so, when I needed that, I would use that in replacement of tieto because it has that same similar smell and taste. So that goes back to, I think, the Vietnamese style of cooking where, you taste when you cook. So, and I actually kind of talk a little bit about that in the cookbook too, where even our recipes, we tested it a lot, but definitely use that as a foundation because now you know what kind of ingredients go into that and the process in terms of to cook it. But use that and kind of use your taste buds to taste. But it's a ratio. It's a ratio thing. So if she's saying about jiang or she probably is using whatever type of spoon and kind of use that as a ratio. But that is definitely something that I encountered while working through the recipes as well. But it really comes back to taste. And Vietnamese cooking, that's one thing that's really wonderful about it. It's very flexible. You know, you cook, you use the ingredients, cook, and you're like, you taste it, and you're like, oh, it's missing a little blandness, a little salt, you know, saltiness. So add a little more fish sauce, and that's something I talk about a little bit in the cookbook too. You know, when some, you know, with pho, or you know, we actually add the fish sauce at the end, you know, when we're serving, right? Because you don't want to cook the fish sauce and it gives that sour taste. So if you want that little bit of that, you know, more depth, then you add it at the end when you're serving. In terms of cooking, it was just getting my mother to kind of sit down and, you know, go through the process with me so I can understand, why we're doing the way that we're doing it. So I had to explain it very clearly to a Western audience as well. But like I enjoy cooking, so I, kind of tested it through, and yeah. Yeah, so there's, so actually I picked recipes from all of our restaurants, as well as our dishes that aren't served at our restaurant, so the home dishes, kind of more traditional Vietnamese dishes, because our restaurant is, I would say it's more modern Vietnamese than traditional, it's not traditional Vietnamese. But I wanted to put some traditional Vietnamese dishes as well that we cook at home, because that's part of our cooking, our style of cooking, and I want people to get to know that as well.
I have a feeling a lot of people are going to go home and try shaken beef tonight, right?
That's actually, there's only really 2 dishes in our secret kitchen. So for those of you who've been to our restaurant, there's our famous garlic noodles, which you've had today, and then also our roast garlic crab. So there's only actually 2 dishes in there. But so unfortunately, those dishes are kind of our secret.
Yeah, because
that
I
has been
want
passed down, that my mother.
I want to.
So when you do a cookbook, you have to keep those away. But we have so many other dishes, like I said, that's from our restaurant that's in there. And actually, on the cover of our book, as you see here, this is actually the our XO noodles. And so when I was writing this cookbook, I said, Mom, we have to put in a really amazing noodle dish. People are going to expect that from us. And you already told me we can't put in the garlic noodles. So I got to put something else that I feel is truly amazing and unique. And so we actually worked on this together and came up with our XO noodle dish. And this was created specifically really just for the cookbook, but a couple of food writers came and tasted it, and I forget her name, from the LA Times, did a article on it and picked it as one of her favorite XO dishes. And so people start coming to our restaurant asking for it. So now it's served at some of our restaurants, but and it's become almost like a signature at our restaurant. But it was specifically created just for the cookbook, and it incorporates a lot of our favorite ingredients, a lot of the herbs that you see here, but it's very interesting. So I definitely suggest everyone to have it at the restaurant and go home and try to make it yourself.
Great.
It's a very,
Well,
very unique also. And the reason I want to answer your question. The reason why I keep the secret, because I always told on my daughter that I don't have money and don't have gold to pass to you. So I just want to keep something souvenir to pass all of you. And I want to make sure that if you want to work, you can use that my recipe to make money. But I don't want to get lazy and just, get money from there. So I just want, you want to work, you want to make money, you should work harder.
That's a wonderful legacy, Helene. And so I just want to thank you, Helene, Jacqueline, and Thuy, for a mouth-watering conversation. Thank you for